Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the weekly DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Miami, Florida. I'm Jeff White. Today on Wavescan, Focus on Africa, the BBC East Mediterranean Relay Station in Cyprus. World Radio Day 2013. European Perspective, and our Bangladesh DX report. Wavescan presents Focus on Africa, a year-long series of reports about shortwave broadcasting and listening on the African continent. In our program today, we present the first episode in a mini-series regarding the fascinating history of the BBC Eastern Relay Station on the island of Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean. In this, another presentation under the title Focus on Africa, we begin at the beginning, which takes us back to the coastal areas of Palestine under the old British Mandate. On the central Mediterranean coast lies the very ancient city of Jaffa, which is described as one of the oldest cities upon planet Earth. These days, Jaffa is quite modern, and it's an integral part of the Tel Aviv-Jaffa metroplex. Ancient Jaffa is noted with several interesting references in the Holy Bible, including, for example, King David and his conquests, King Solomon receiving the cedars of Lebanon for the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, and Jonah and the whale with his epic voyage in the eastern Mediterranean. Jaffa is also mentioned in an ancient Egyptian letter from the year 1440 BC, glorifying the conquest by Pharaoh Thutmose III, who was the adoptive brother of the well-known biblical patriarch Moses. To obtain the conquest of the city, the Pharaoh hid armed Egyptian soldiers in large baskets filled with gifts for the governor of Jaffa. During the latter stages of the British Mandate over Palestine, an Air Force base was established on land near Jaffa that was leased from the local authorities. During the year 1941, a surreptitious radio broadcasting station was established in this Air Force base using RAF equipment, and it was launched under the identification slogan, Freedom Broadcasting Station. Initially, the programming from this new shortwave station was beamed to the Balkan countries in Eastern Europe, though programming in the Arabic language is added soon afterwards, with the identification announcement in Arabic as Sharq al-Adna, and in English as the Near East Broadcasting Station. At full strength, Sharq al-Adna in Jaffa was on the air with 4 transmitters at 7.5 kilowatts each. During its 8-year history at this location in coastal Palestine, the shadowy Sharq al-Adna was regularly on the air with the 4 transmitters in parallel under the general call sign ZJM. All of its international shortwave channels were heard far and wide in Europe, North America, and the South Pacific, and these channels were ZJM4 on 6135 kHz, ZJM5 on 6170, ZJM6 on 6790 kHz, ZJM7 on 11750, and ZJM8 on 9650 kHz. The local shortwave channel, known as ZJM3 on 3320 kHz, was at times listed as in use, but there are no known loggings of this channel in the DX publications of the era. The 2 medium wave transmitters in Palestine during this era, with 20 kilowatts each, on 677 kHz and 574 kHz, were also allocated call signs in the same ZJM sequence as ZJM and ZJM2. However, these 2 broadcast transmitters were not part of the Sharq al-Adna facility. The studios for the 2 medium wave transmitters of this Palestine broadcasting service were in Jerusalem, and the transmitters were installed at Ramallah on the downward slopes towards the Jordan River. Most of the programming for Sharq al-Adna in coastal Jaffa was in the Arabic language, though some was in English, and occasionally some was in Hindustani, for the benefit of Indian soldiers on duty in the area. The identification signal was a short melody on a harp. During the Palestine era, This station was always under the control of the British government, though it theoretically changed hands a few times. To the casual listener, Sharq al-Adna was a mystery station with interesting programs, and to the dedicated international radio monitor, this Near East broadcasting station was a clandestine operation on behalf of the British government. In 1945, after the end of World War II, the legal status of Sharq al-Adna was changed, and it began to operate as a commercial radio broadcasting station, and it was noted on air with advertisements in the Arabic language. The British mandate over Palestine was scheduled to end at midnight on May 14, 1948. In preparation for the Palestine areas to declare their own independence amidst the turmoil and bitter fighting of that era, the British staged their withdrawal in what historians describe as their typical style, with pomp and circumstance. In advance, the technical equipment and personnel associated with the shortwave radio station Sharq al-Adna were readied and withdrawn from Jaffa on the Palestine coast and transferred to a new location on the island of Cyprus in the eastern Mediterranean, just 70 miles offshore. During the Palestine era, a colorful QSL certificate was issued by Sharq al-Adna from its official address in Jerusalem. The first known edition of this QSL sheet contained a printing error showing the spelling of Palestine without the first E, that is, Palestine. A second printing of this same QSL certificate made a correction, as shown on page 72 of Jerome Berg's authoritative shortwave history, broadcasting 1945 to today, and the word Palestine is spelled correctly. When Freedom at Midnight occurred, not in India, but rather in the Middle East, on May 14, 1948, radio station Sharq al-Adna was no longer in Jaffa. It was already under installation on Cyprus. And that's our story next time in this sequence of topics on the BBC Eastern Relay Station.
You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
Next, from the Ital Radio News Desk in Florence, Italy, here's European Perspective, a monthly feature about international broadcasting from the old continent, written by Luigi Cobisi. Recently, Belgrade-based Serbian Radio International took an unexpected move to bring their Italian program back on shortwave. After a couple of months of silence, the program is now aired at 1830 UTC, Monday through Friday, on 6100 kHz, opening the series of international broadcasts from Serbia. An English broadcast is on the air at 1930 UTC and later at 2200 UTC. Broadcasts are now transmitted from Bijeljina, Bosnia, with 250 kilowatts. The signal is quite strong all over Europe, notwithstanding that China Radio International is operating on the same frequency in English at 1830 UTC. Just in the opposite way, the Voice of Russia has cut off most of their shortwave and medium wave frequencies, especially to Europe. Their Italian program left analog shortwave after 70 years of service. This is a bitter surprise for listeners in Southern Europe, who are now forced to tune in medium wave 1548 kHz. For Europe, the Voice of Russia now retains a few broadcasts in DRM only. Until March 30th, the schedule for digital shortwave for the Voice of Russia reads as follows: 11635 kHz at 0600 to 0900 UTC in English, and 0900 to 1000 UTC in German. 6000 kHz at 2000 to 2100 UTC in Spanish, and 21 to 2200 UTC in Portuguese. And on 6145 kHz, Italian at 1800 UTC. From the Voice of Russia in DRM. One of the tiniest radio stations in the world broadcast in Florence, Italy on February 14th, 2013. This special event station celebrated World Radio Day on February 13th. UNESCO proclaimed World Radio Day last year and chose this date to remember the first ever broadcast from United Nations Radio back in 1946. In Florence, Ital Radio operated a 5 milliwatt medium wave station for 60 minutes to show how radio can help local communities cope with emergencies by using radio as the simplest way of communicating. The broadcast was monitored by a group of members of Rotary Club Florence East with some cheap medium wave receivers. The experiment was planned, says Luigi Cobisi, also to remember Marconi's trip to Florence in 1912, when he encouraged a local scientist to experiment with radio within buildings. Padre Alfani was at the time working on receiving signals from the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and he succeeded in showing how radio could pass through walls by placing a radio receiver in the Cathedral of Florence, the greatest Renaissance building in the city. The station was later placed in an astronomy observatory, where it is still visible to this day after it was reconstructed in the earlier years of this century. It has remained split into pieces since 1915, when authorities required Padre Alfani to stop reception due to the First World War. And that's all from Florence for this month. If you wish to be informed on what's going on the Italian and European international broadcasting scene, please check the website www.italradio.org. That's italradio.org. You can find a web portal there with current news in English as well. You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. As we mentioned a moment ago, UNESCO is celebrating World Radio Day. It was celebrated actually on February 13th with, among other things, a special web page that contains many articles and audio material prepared especially for the occasion. This includes an article by High Frequency Coordination Conference Chairman Aldrich Chipp about the importance of shortwave radio, an audio report by yours truly about the shortwave crisis, and material from various sources in English and Spanish. It's interesting to listen to and may also be rebroadcast by local radio stations around the world. If you'd like to find that page, it has a very long URL, but you can do a Google search. Just search for UNESCO World Radio Day, and you'll find it. And on that page, there are a number of audio messages, including one from the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon.
As a young boy growing up in a poor village after the Korean War, we did not have much. No phones, no television. But we had something that connected us to the world outside our small village. We had radio, and radio helped open my eyes and ears to the world. Since its invention more than 100 years ago, radio has sparked the imagination, opened the doors for change, and served as a channel for life-saving information. Radio entertains, educates, and informs. It promotes democratic expression and influences ideas. From shortwave to FM to satellite transmission, radio connects people wherever they are. In conflict situations and times of crisis, radio is a lifeline for vulnerable communities. Radio is both valuable and cost-effective. From day one, the United Nations has been using radio to reach the peoples of the world. UN radio sheds light on all issues on the United Nations agenda, from sustainable development to the protection of children to peacekeeping and conflict prevention. We are proud of our rich history of radio production in many languages and the innovative ways we use radio to inform and serve the world. On this World Radio Day, let us celebrate the power of radio and let us work together to tune the world to the frequency of peace, development, and human rights for all.
Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, speaking about World Radio Day. Now we go to Bangladesh for our DX report from Salahuddin Dolar.
Dear listeners and radio hobbyists, welcome you in the February edition of Bangladesh DX report in Wavescan. This is Salahuddin Dolar from Rajshahi, Bangladesh. Glad to be back and thanks for listening. We want to thank our listeners who have sent their valuable comments and reception report on the 7th year anniversary episode of Bangladesh DX report in Wavescan. Let's start. UN Radio to start Bangla broadcast from this month. The United Nations will open UN Radio Bangla during this month. Introduction of websites in Bangla and attachment of news clipping have already been started through the radio link of the UN website. Anyone can hear the program in Bangla through website of free cost. Bangladesh Permanent Representative to the UN Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen disclosed this to Bangladesh Sangbad Sangstha on 4th February. It is indeed a very big achievement during this month and we are very much delighted due to this, Dr. Momen told the news agency. Even formal news broadcasting would also inaugurated during this month. ABC Radio FM 89.2 ABC Radio FM 89.2 has got the permission allotment of frequency 89.2 MHz and instrument to set up 2 new stations in Chittagong and Cox's Bazar. Bangladesh Telecommunication Regulatory Commission's BTRC's Director General Mr. Ahsan Habib handed over the papers to Mr. Mutiur Rahman, the Director of ABC Radio. ABC's CEO Mr. Sanaullah and Technical Advisor Mr. Manoranjan Das were also present in the program. RVA Listeners Meeting. Radio Veritas Asia Bengali Service is going to arrange 2 separate listeners meeting in West Bengal, India on 23rd February and in Bangladesh on 15 March 2013. The listeners who want to join the meeting, please email to rvachetona@yahoo.com for India and rvabanidipti@yahoo.com for Bangladesh. Now the receiving log of different radio station which I monitored. 24th January 1400 to 1410 UTC, China Radio International in Bangla on 11610 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 1410 to 1420 UTC, Voice of Indonesia on 9525 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 1425 to 1430 UTC, KBS World Radio in Indonesia on 9570 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 1430 to 1445 UTC, Radio Japan in Hindi on 15720 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 1445 to 1500 UTC, Deutsche Welle in Urdu on 15360 kHz. The SI code was 333. 25th January 00115 to 00125, Voice of Burma in Burmese on 7510 kHz. The SI code was 222. 00125 to 00150, All India Radio Lucknow in Hindi on 4880 kHz. The SIO code was 333. 00150 to 0100 UTC, Voice of America Special English on 9325 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 0100 to 0110 UTC, All India Radio Gangtok in Nepali on 4835 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 0140 to 0200 Radio Vatican in English on 9560 kHz. The SIO code was 444. 0200 to 0220 UTC, Radio Filipinas in English on 15 to 85 kHz, the SIO code was 444. 0400 to 0410 BBS Bhutan on 6035 kHz, the SIO code was 444. 0722 0730 PBS Xinjiang Holy Tibet on 9490 kHz, the SIO code was 333. 28th January 0000 32 0000 40 UTC Radio Veritas Asia in Tamil on 11855 kHz, the SIO code was 444. January 1300 to 1310 Radio Free Asia in Burmese on 11795 kHz, the SIO code was 444. Bangladesh DX team will issue a QSL card for February edition of Bangladesh DX report in Wavescan. For EQSL, please send your reception report to dxbangla@gmail.com, dxbangla@gmail.com, or if you want to have a paper QSL, please send your reception report with $1 IRC or $1 US to Bangladesh DX report, care of Salah Uddin Dollar, Village and Post Chowmohoni CEIS-AU MAHANI Chowmohoni Motihar 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 Rajshahi RAJSHAHI Rajshahi, postal code 6000 Bangladesh. To know about us, you may visit our web www.bdxr.blogspot.com, or you can send your valuable comments and logins to dxbangla@gmail.com. Okay, I will come with more DX news in the next edition. Till then, take care. Salahuddin Dollar, Rajshahi, Bangladesh.
We end today's edition of Wavescan with some music from Cyprus. This is by James Williams, who was born of a Cypriot mother, and a tune called The Shepherd Girl. Thanks for listening to Wavescan, the International DX program from Adventist World Radio. Research written by Adrian Peterson in Indianapolis. Next week on Wavescan, a Wednesday wireless event on Thursday, and our Australian DX report. Reminder that we have two different QSL cards available for you, one from AWR, another from WRMI. You can send your reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. We always appreciate hearing from you with comments, suggestions, and of course your reception reports. Our email address is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Miami. Till next week, good listening, everyone.